I'm your huckleberry.
One thing that vexes me, really vexes me, is when people pretend that they're intellectuals and they don't read their arguments and really don't read their arguments. Okay. I put up a video talking about the man in the house rule, keeping fathers out of the house. And the man of the quote unquote man in the house rule under AFDC was struck down by the Supreme Court. But what Mr. Brown didn't do was actually read the case and interpret the case. Anybody, a 7-year-old, can read the case. If you're going to analyze, you're going to be intellectual, you have to analyze the case and actually interpret it and see what it says, which he did not. So his argument that the man striking down the man in the house rule actually brought fathers back into the home, or allowed fathers back into the home, which was not true. So most people don't do it, but I did my due diligence and I looked up the man in the house rule. So I went simply to the I think it's Law Library Online. I have to look at it again. Law Encyclopedia. And this is the brief synopsis of what it says. Man in the house rule, a regulation that was formerly applied in certain jurisdictions that denied poor families welfare payments in the event that a man resided under the same roof with them. Under the man in the house rule, a child who would otherwise qualify for welfare benefits was denied those benefits if the child's mother was living with or having relations with any single man or married able-bodied male. The man was considered to be a substitute father, even if that man was not supporting the child. Get that. The man was considered to be a substitute father, even if the man was not supporting the child. In other words, you could not have any man in the house, adult male in the house, because that man automatically became a substitute father and denied the children benefits. Get it? Got it? Good. Before 1968, administrative agencies in many states created and enforced the man in the house rule. In 1968, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down the regulation as being contrary to the legislative goals of the Aid to Families of Dependent Children, AFDC program. The AFDC program, established by the Social Security Act of 1935, provides benefits to the child of impoverished parents. In King versus Smith 392, the U.S. Supreme Court entertained a challenge to the man in the house rule brought by 4 children of Mrs. Sylvester Smith, a widow. The children were denied benefits by Dallas County, Alabama welfare authorities based on their knowledge that a man named Williams was visiting Miss Smith on weekends and had sexual relations with her. The children of Smith filed a class action suit in federal court on behalf of other children in Alabama who were denied benefits under Alabama substitute father regulation. The regulation considered a man as a substitute father if he had lived in the home with the mother. He visited the home frequently for purpose of living with the mother, or he cohabited with the mother elsewhere. Testimony in the case revealed that there was some confusion about authorities or how to interpret the regulation. One official testified that the regulation applied only if the parties had sex once a week. Another officially testified that sex every 3 months was sufficient. And another and still another placed the frequency once every 6 months. According to the High Court, Congress did not intend that the AFDC program required children to look for their food to a man who was not in the least obliged to support them. The court maintained that when Congress used the term parent in the Social Security Act, it was referring to an individual who owed the child a state-imposed legal duty of support. Ultimately, the court struck down the man in the house rule by holding that the AFDC provisions in the Social Security Act destitute children who are legally fatherless cannot flatly be denied federally funded assistance on the transparent fiction that they have a substitute father. In other words, dumbass, the man in the house rule didn't allow fathers back in the house when the woman was getting benefits. The man in the house rule was if someone else other than the one who was legally obligated to support the child was in the house. In other words, if you were the biological father or an adoptive father that legally owed that child support or legally mandated to support that child, you could not live in the house and that child get welfare. In other words, the 1935 law applied to children, women and children whose father either were dead, which originally that's what it was for. The original law was for to give widows support. In other words, the woman was married and the woman and the man died, a widow could get support from the state or support from the federal government in 1935 during the Depression. Now, with men leaving for work and separating from their families, they extended that to women that were abandoned. So in the 1930s especially, you had during the Depression, you had a lot of women that claimed that they were abandoned. If they were abandoned by their husband, they could actually ask for support from the state. Get it? Got it? Good. So that is the man from the man in the house rule. Had nothing to do with fathers. All it was is so that a woman who's getting some nookie from another guy who's not the father, the children were still could be what? Supported by AFDC. That was only under AFDC. They actually changed the AFDC to TANF so the fathers could be allowed. But anyway, that's number one. Now, here's another part of the reason you should shepherd what you post, especially if you consider yourself debating. This is from 1990. Does AFDC up encourage two-parent families? Abstract. Effective October 1990, the Family Support Act, FSA, of 1988 extended the previously state optional AFDC unemployed parent program to all states. This policy was undertaken in an effort to reduce the two-parent penalty of the AFDC program, but little is actually known about unemployed parent, or UP, and its influence on family structure. This study clarifies what is meant by a two-parent family in the federal legislation and provides new evidence on AFDC's incentive effects. The empirical analysis makes use of the cross-state variation in the generosity of AFDC benefits and the present or absence of AFDC UP before the FSA of 1988. Specifically, these state-level data are appended to data from the 1987 National Survey of Families and Households. A real advantage of the NSFH is that it allows for the identification of those truly eligible for the UP program. married and unmarried couples who have an in common dependent child. The major empirical finding is that contrary to the hopes of Congress, a state's provision of the UP program is not found to encourage two-parent families. I wonder why. Introduction. A common concern amongst politicians, economists, and the public at large is that the major U.S. cash welfare program for non-elderly poor, aid to families with dependent children, encourages single motherhood by largely providing benefits to single-parent families. Specifically, before October 1990, get this, Amiri Brown, get this, check this out, because you can actually see the citation, which you don't normally give, at the bottom of this page. Check this out. Aid to families with dependent children, AFDC, encouraged single motherhood by largely providing benefits to single-parent families. Specifically, before October 1990, two-parent families were ineligible for cash assistance in 22 states. In the remaining states, benefits were available to two-parent families in which the principal earner was unemployed through the state optional AFDC Unemployed Parent Program. Effective October 1990, the Family Support Act, FSA, of 1988 mandated that all states provide benefits to two-parent families through the AFDC UP program. This provision was hailed as a pro-family and common sense by members of Congress on the grounds that it would reduce incentive for two-family parents to split up in hard times. Negro. Do you understand the words that come out of my mouth? Just because the man in the house rule was struck down doesn't mean they did not put fathers out of the home. So everything in that video that I actually put up was 100% accurate. And unintelligent asshats like you, or hacks like you and your wicked witch of the West, who skirts you right under, can't figure that out. For educated people, you can't shepherd your own goddamn law. I did this in 5 minutes. Actually, 5 minutes. So either you were unintelligent or disingenuous. Take your poison. Pick your poison. Teaching flying monkeys to read is a dangerous endeavor. That's all I gotta say. Red hat. Not really. I got one more thing to say. Maybe maybe we should put him on the corner with an organ grinder, put a little red hat on him, and feed him peanuts out of the machine. Anyway, I know that was petty. Anyway, that's all I got for this one. BGS out, and I will see you guys on the next quick take.